Welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate all of you guys for joining us for yet another late night edition here of live stream, going over all the different acquisitions that have gone around the NBA today. We saw a whole bunch of activity last night as free agency opened up now at 5 p.m. As opposed to midnight like it's done in years past. So very different seeing it happen all during the day instead of having to watch our phones in the middle of the night, hoping to find our latest our favorite team make the latest transaction, that kind of a thing. But today we saw a whole bunch of moves, the biggest of which is got to start with Rudy Gobert. Everybody on Twitter was talking about it while I was at work, and unfortunately I couldn't make a video fast enough. I was able to get a couple other videos that I had made this morning anyway, out today, but I'll get a Rudy Gobert video out later on this evening, maybe tomorrow morning. But let's start with that Gobert trade. The trade itself, Rudy Gobert goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for Malik Beasley, good shooting guard, Patrick Beverley, who just signed that contract extension with the Minnesota Timberwolves. We saw his reaction to winning that playoffs or winning the play-in game anyway, and getting to the playoffs with the Minnesota Timberwolves. It looked like he had won, I don't know, the lottery or something. He had won an NBA title, but no, it was just a play-in game. He kind of overreacted. But he definitely was one of the leaders on this team. A little bit surprising that they shipped him out. I was more expecting to see names like D'Angelo Russell be involved in that kind of a deal. But the acquisition of Rudy Gobert is definitely a little bit more surprising. They also acquired Jared Vanderbilt, who was a starting power forward on this for the Timberwolves this past year. Leandro Bolmaro, another first-round pick from last year. This year's first-round pick, Walker Kessler. 4 future first-round picks as well. That's where the money is in this deal. Minnesota is going to send Utah unprotected first-round picks in 2023, 2025, 2027, and a top 5 protected pick in 2029, in addition to a pick swap in 2026. Does that sound like a lot? Absolutely it does. Does it sound like they may have traded for Kevin Durant? You betcha, but no, they ended up with Rudy Gobert. While he is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, he is a center making $40 million. And while he still is able to move his feet, we all have seen how big men age. They don't move their feet as well. And they already have one player on their roster, big man Karl Anthony Towns, who struggles moving his feet defensively. If both of them start to struggle, as Gobert starts to age anyway, the defensive liabilities that they have in their front court are going to be prolific. Now, don't forget, they have the former number 1 pick anyway, and Anthony Edwards. His contract is going to be coming up soon. They have a lot of money tied into D'Angelo Russell as well. They sent out a bunch of pieces in this deal, but they have signed a few other pieces back. They signed Taurean Prince to a contract extension, 2 years, $18 million. They also brought in Bryn Forbes today, a 3-point shooter who played on the Milwaukee Bucks the past couple of years. So we'll see how good this Minnesota Timberwolves team is. They lose some veteran leadership with the loss of Patrick Beverley. Malik Beasley, of course, was a good scorer for them. So we'll see how well this team performs. The biggest surprise, again, for me, is those draft picks. 3 unprotected first-round picks and a top 5 protected pick years in the future. That's a lot of Minnesota's future that they're gambling away here. Now, of course, they could flip assets if things don't work out. But as we've seen, they're not going to get near this value that they're trading away to get Rudy Gobert. Maybe they turn around and flip D'Angelo Russell to get some pieces back. We saw that the Atlanta Hawks, who just made the deal for DeJounte Murray, giving away unprotected picks to the San Antonio Spurs, traded away Kevin Huerter today to the Sacramento Kings and got a first-round pick back. So they're kind of recouping their pick value. Maybe the Minnesota Timberwolves do something like that here. We already have a comment anyway. Thank you, Kent, again for joining us. This trade was absolutely ridiculous. I do agree there. Timberwolves thinking they were always in the market for another big man to play next to Karl Anthony Towns. I think they saw Vanderbilt as a nice piece, more of a bench guy rather than a starter next to Karl Anthony Towns. I think they wanted to get a guy like John Collins in the past, another scoring big man. But getting a defensive guy here makes a little bit more sense from skill set side anyway. But of course, that $40 million is definitely a little bit more hefty than the John Collins contract, which does surprise me even more. The haul that they got for trading away Rudy Gobert. The Jazz are set for the future. They don't even need to trade away Donovan Mitchell. They could take that same package that they just got for Rudy Gobert, turn around and say, hey, Brooklyn, you want this for KD? That would be very competitive with any other offer that would be on the table for Kevin Durant at this point. The Phoenix Suns, who were long thought to be the favorite in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes if there ever was going to be one, now they're going to have to figure out, hey, is the sign and trade of Ayton and a Mikal Bridges offer, as well as picks going back to the Brooklyn Nets, enough, or does maybe the Utah Jazz get in on the sweepstakes there? I don't think under any circumstances Utah's going to turn around and take that package and go get another star. I don't think that's what they want to do. I think they want to do what the Boston Celtics did with the package that they got for the Kevin Garnett deal years ago and just use those picks themselves. If things don't work out in Minnesota, those picks are going to be chef's kiss amazing. That's how good their future is going to be if things don't work out in Minnesota. And the entire time, Utah could still be in the playoff hunt in the Western Conference, even after trading away Rudy Gobert. The package that Minnesota sent to them, without the picks themselves, Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Leandro Balmoro, those are going to be good guards, that rotation pieces. They're going to have to trade away one of their veterans that they already have on the roster. Maybe this allows Mike Conley to be moved out, save that salary that they have been wanting to save for years now. The $40 million that they send out in the Gobert trade also saves them a ton of money, but they take away long-term money and free up cap space for future years. Donovan Mitchell is a great NBA player, plays some defense, great scorer, prolific scorer, was able to get the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. So we'll see what kind of success they end up having. But the trade itself, Jared Vanderbilt would be a plug-and-play starter for me if I'm the Utah Jazz. Patrick Beverly might be a piece you turn around and flip to a contending team. It seems like Patrick Beverly wants to lead yet another team to the playoffs. Utah was just in the playoffs. It's not like he's taking a team who hasn't been to the playoffs in 15 years. Maybe turn around and flip Patrick Beverly to a team like the Sacramento Kings, who seem to want to get a little bit more talent on the back end after trading away so much talent in Buddy Hield and Tyrese Halliburton to get Sabonis this past trade deadline. But thank you guys for joining us. A lot of you guys have already joined us right now. We got 9 of you with us, so I appreciate all of you for joining us. Let us know where you're watching from, what's your favorite team, who you're hoping to see join your favorite roster. Just kind of going down the list, there's a whole bunch of moves today, so let's just kind of start right at the top. The other big move of the day, in my opinion, is going to be the move for Malcolm Brogdon. Really? DeAndre Ayton. I don't see that yet, anyway. I see Damian Lee to the Suns. Looking right now. Let me flip over. That'd be very surprising if they invest big money into DeAndre Ayton when they still have Miles Turner. Still don't see it. Damian Lee, I still don't see it. I'll keep an eye out for it, but I don't see it yet anyway. But if that's true, DeAndre Ayton to the Pacers, what? I don't know. I still don't see anything from Woj or Shams, and those are the ones I really pay attention to. They have the inside track on pretty much all of these free agent rumors. They have lots of sources, people that they can go to. But just getting back to the Malcolm Brogdon trade, the trade that the Indiana Pacers made to get back the pieces that they did for Malcolm Brogdon, just kind of want to go over that real quick. The trade itself included a 23 first-round pick, center Daniel Tice, the wing Aaron Naismith, as well as Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, and Juwan Morgan. Those 3 players that I mentioned at the very end don't factor into this deal at all. The piece of Aaron Naismith is going to be very good for Rick Carlisle's system. He likes wings. Wings perform very well in a system that are developmental type wings, and that's what the Pacers are looking to do. Think of Dorian Finney-Smith, the undrafted free agent. Aaron Naismith is a heck of a lot better prospect coming into the league, better three-point shooter, better scorer. And the Mavericks, of course, were interested in him a year or two ago anyway, when he was in the draft. And Rick Carlisle, of course, was part of that group that was interested in getting him. So another piece that Carlisle wanted when he was with Dallas goes to the Pacers there. Daniel Tice picks up some minutes there at the center spot, kind of gives them insurance in the event that they do trade Miles Turner. If they do end up getting DeAndre Ayton, that's even crazier. I don't understand what the Pacers would be doing if they get a guy like DeAndre Ayton. Maybe they figure pairing him with Halliburton kind of springboards their rebuild. But I think that might be a little too soon, especially considering that the Phoenix Suns are going to have the inside track on him. Even in a sign and trade, I think they'd still have the inside track no matter what type of contract he wants to sign on another team. But the Malcolm Brogdon acquisition by the Celtics gives the Celtics exactly what they need. They were in need of a point guard. I said it in a video or live stream earlier this week anyway, that the one piece that the Celtics needed this postseason that didn't allow them to beat the Golden State Warriors, they needed a ball handler, somebody who could direct the offense. Marcus Smart is a defensive player turned point guard. Derek White is more of a slashy type backup combo guard. They didn't really have a number one league guard. Peyton Pritchard is a nice backup bench piece, but he's not a starting point guard. Malcolm Brogdon, great defender. The one worry I have with him is, of course, injury, and hopefully the Boston Celtics medical staff is going to go fully through his medical records and make sure everything's okay. But he's missed a lot of time the past couple of years. That was the one worry I had going into the offseason with him, is teams that were looking to acquire him. That's the one red flag I have. Other than that, anyway, I've really liked the player since he was back with the Milwaukee Bucks. He was kind of a 50, 40, 90 guy. For those of you who don't know, 50% from two-point range, 40% from three-point range, and 90% from the free throw line. That's very rare in NBA history to do something like that. I think there's only like 10 players in the NBA who's ever averaged something like that, and he did it for a consistent period of time. Now, of course, injuries have derailed some of those averages, so they've ticked down just a little bit, but he's still an exemplary player. They were just going a little bit younger with the Indiana Pacers. Otherwise, I think he might have been part of that core if he had just been a little bit younger. But shipping out $20 million in salary for the Pacers right now makes a lot of sense. Allows them to take on big contracts from other teams, acquire more draft picks. There was even some rumors that they may trade away their first-round pick from last year because he was an older player in Chris Duarte. I don't see that happening at all. I think they're going to use him and try to keep that value down because he is a little bit older and take advantage of that age and use that in negotiations against him in future years. As bad as that sounds, that's how things work in the NBA. Age is a big factor, your production, those kinds of things. And if they can get really good, solid production out of him, maybe not all-star level production out of him, they can keep him around Indiana for a number of years at a reasonable contract. They like those $10 to $20 million contracts in Indiana. They don't like the $25, $30 million contracts. That's why the rumors a couple of years ago of Ben Simmons going there, absolutely ludicrous, was never going to happen. But that's kind of the big two moves of the day. Going down the rest of the list anyway, Zach LaVine did decide to re-sign with the Chicago Bulls, as we figured all along. There wasn't really free agent money out there unless he decided to do a sign and trade type of a deal. The Bulls, though, are pretty much locked into being a 4 or 5 seed in the East for the next several years. I don't see them being any better than that. I've mentioned this several times. The way they've constructed their team, it makes them only good enough to be able to be a solid team during the regular season, maybe even a good team during the regular season. They don't have the depth to compete in the postseason. They don't have the pieces that they need to compete in the postseason. They don't have the shot making they need to compete in the postseason. That's why every year it's going to be a first-round playoff exit. So if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, good on you. You kept the star player, but at what cost to your future? Sure, you're going to be in contention for a playoff spot, but you're not a contender. Let's not get it confused. The other move that we saw today was the Kevin Huerter trade from the Atlanta Hawks to the Sacramento Kings. Just want to see what that pick ended up being. Looks like it's a 2024 pick, lottery protected. So the Kings pick is a little bit further down the road. The lottery protection on there is a little bit of a kind of a thing for the Atlanta Hawks. They did trade away unprotected picks to get DeJounte Murray, but they had a plethora of guards at the two-guard position. They still may need a backup point now with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young handling the majority of the ball handling duties, but when one of them goes down, they need somebody to be able to do so. Losing Delon Wright to the Washington Wizards yesterday hurt a little bit in their pursuit of having a good backup there. We'll see which route they end up going to get somebody to fill those shoes, but it shouldn't be a hefty acquisition cost. The trade also sent Justin Holiday and Maurice Harkless back to the Atlanta Hawks in this deal. Some wings, bigger wings, defensive wings, not scorers. So this could work out in Atlanta's favor as far as being able to defend bigger wings while allowing their guards to play off of that. They still need to trade away John Collins, in my opinion. Things are not going to get any better for him in Atlanta. I think you mean Goran Dragic. I believe he's going to end up in Dallas. I only think it's a matter of time. I don't think it's going to be for any money. I think it's probably going to end up being for a minimum salary type of deal, unless they work out a sign and trade anyway for JaVale McGee instead of signing him to the tax or the tax mid-level exception anyway, the $6.5 million exception. I don't think Dragic is going to get much more than that. If they are able to work out a sign and trade, maybe that gets Dragic some more money. Maybe they turn around and use that money to go after another free agent and split it between him and Dragic. That could be possible, as they have some bench spots open on the back end of their roster. They did sign Theo Pinson today. Not a big impact on the floor, but off the court. We saw during the postseason how many times the Dallas bench was fined during the postseason for excessive celebration, infringing on the court, interfering with play, that kind of a thing. I never thought it was a infringing on the court kind of a thing. It was very different seeing the way they were cheering for their team as opposed to other teams. They were right up on the baseline. Now, maybe you could make an argument that they shouldn't be right up on the baseline. Well, if that's the case, then the NBA needs to figure out something as far as bench spots, because I see that in every game in the fourth quarter across the entire league. You can't tell me just during the playoffs when it's on national TV, that's when you care about it and not any other time. But Theo Pinson did re-sign with the Dallas Mavericks, 1-year deal, minimum salary. Very low impact or low cost for them, as he was not eligible for another 2-way contract. So they keep him around and keep that leadership going, or the camaraderie, the chemistry, that kind of thing going. Kyrie is expected to be traded to Dallas. I believe that is very likely as well. After losing Jalen Brunson to the New York Knicks anyway, in my opinion, it happened about a week ago before teams were even able to be communicating with opposing players. But that was basically a fait accompli. Brunson went to the New York Knicks anyway. I expect that may end up being a sign and trade as well, allowing Dallas to get a huge exception back. Maybe they give them a second-round pick to incentivize them, to allow them to get that exception, allow them to keep that salary hold on their books so that they can acquire bigger pieces in trade. But Kyrie Irving is in the last year of his deal. He does have a 15% trade kicker on a $37.1 million deal, I believe. That trade bonus that he gets would come from the Brooklyn Nets if that happens, not from the Mavericks. But there's two teams, in my opinion, that have a real chance of getting Kyrie Irving. First, the Lakers. It's really about whether or not the Brooklyn Nets are willing to take back Russell Westbrook, who's also in the final year of his deal at $47 million. So that's another $10 million they'd have to pay. And in order for that to happen, though, the Lakers would have to give up the 2027 pick. And in my estimation, it would have to be completely unprotected, because if things don't work out with the Lakers anyway, and he doesn't end up signing a long-term deal, if the team gets older, as they have been over the last few years, and things just aren't going well, that pick needs to hold some kind of value for Brooklyn to be able to make that kind of a deal. Dallas can make a better trade just from the pieces that can go on the floor. You can't tell me that having a Russell Westbrook who isn't worthy of starting on a team that absolutely needs a ball handler next to LeBron James is going to be better with the Brooklyn Nets than, say, Tim Hardaway Jr. or Spencer Dinwiddie, even if they take back the salary arbitrage that is Davis Bertans. Now, Bertans has 3 years left on his deal. However, only $37 million of that is guaranteed. Another 12-ish is non-guaranteed for that final year of that deal. So it's kind of a tradable asset anyway, as far as a contract next offseason. But for right now, I think Brooklyn's in asset acquisition mode. They're going to tear everything down and go from the studs like they did before, after the deal they made with the Boston Celtics, and they saw how horribly wrong that deal went. They were able to get good young players to perform better than expected. Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie was a part of that. Maybe they go back to Spencer Dinwiddie and say, hey, we did it with you once before. Can you do it again? But Kyrie Irving going to Dallas would be a very good thing for both the Dallas Mavericks and the Brooklyn Nets, in my estimation. That, to me, seems a far more likely scenario than the Lakers or any other team that might be out there. Apparently, the Philadelphia 76ers kicked the tires on that as an option, but I don't think they're really interested in acquiring yet another Brooklyn Nets star. They saw how that worked out with Brooklyn last year, having Harden, Durant, and Kyrie Irving. It just didn't work. Now, Harden did opt out of his contract, but I expect him to go back there. But I just don't see the Philadelphia 76ers being interested at the level that the Mavericks or the Lakers are going to be, as far as trading away picks to be able to bring in Kyrie Irving. Some other moves that have happened recently anyway. Joe Ingles goes to the Milwaukee Bucks, going to give them another 3-and-D type player. He's more of a defender at this point of his career. His shooting numbers have dropped, and of course, injury last year worries you a lot. His feet are getting a little slower, so maybe he's got a year, maybe two left in him of really good production. The Warriors, they got a couple of good players that I was very surprised that they actually were able to get done. First, they were able to sign Kevon Looney to a 3-year contract extension worth $25.5 million. That's a lot of money for them because a lot of that is going to go straight to tax. They're going to be taxed at quite a clip because they were already over the luxury tax. And every dollar you spend over that, you're spending $2, $3, $4 per dollar you spend in tax just to sign Kevon Looney. The other move that they made was bring in Dante DiVincenzo. We saw how things ended last season with the Sacramento Kings for Dante DiVincenzo. Basically accused the organization of choosing to play lesser players in front of him just to hinder his free agent value. The contract that he signed was a 2-year, $9.3 million deal. The second year is a player option, so if he does get minutes on the Golden State Warriors, which figure to be a playoff team, that his next free agent contract should be much better, so he should regain some of that value. But he goes to a playoff team and possibly and definitely a title contending team next year. He'll definitely be more in the spotlight as opposed to how he was with the Sacramento Kings. The other move today, anyway, that I saw, John Wall finally did agree to that 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. We mentioned before of the Anthony Simons signing with the Portland Trailblazers, 4 years and $100 million. Chalk that one up in the absolutely insane contract column. First, the Rudy Gobert trade was absolutely insane, of course, today. Yesterday, the insanity really started with that contract. 4 years and $100 million to a guy who scores 17 points a game in garbage time. I understand his shooting numbers are decent. He's shooting about 40% and change from three. Down the stretch last year, he shot 50% down the stretch from three. But you got to understand, the players that are guarding him in those minutes are third and fourth string players. That's why he's able to carve them up, get into the lane, because he's not going up against an actual defense. That's what really scares me if you're a Portland Trailblazers fan, because if things don't work out with that contract, you're looking at Damian Lillard requesting a trade possibly as soon as this offseason before we even get to the start of the season. Apparently, he's already starting to mull his options. He was hoping to get a player like Kevin Durant, and signing a guy like Anthony Simons and not going after a guy like KD or any of the other big free agents that were out there has got to be disheartening for Damian Lillard. He's always been a loyal guy, has said he wanted to stay there, but the Portland Trailblazers sent off a bunch of his teammates last year in cap-saving moves. C.J. McCollum went to the New Orleans Pelicans. Norman Powell and Robert Covington went to the L.A. Clippers. They saved a lot of money, brought in Eric Bledsoe, who's going to be a trade chip this offseason because of his non-guaranteed salary, but he's still on there as of right now. But the money that they're doling out in Portland right now is scary. I'm really worried about their future, and if you're a Trailblazers fan, you have to hope for the best for Anthony Simons. Very small guard, good scorer in garbage time, but he needs to prove it against real talent in the NBA, and he hasn't been able to do so as of yet. Giannis force a trade? That's not happening. Sorry. Giannis isn't going to force a trade. You hear about players being loyal. In my opinion, there's only been like 3 or 4 truly loyal players in the NBA history anyway. That's going to be Dirk Nowitzki, Tim Duncan, Paul Pierce until the very end of his career when he was traded away by the Boston Celtics anyway. Those are some of the few truly loyal guys. Kobe Bryant comes to mind. Michael Jordan back when he was still playing. I don't really count his ending years because he was more of an owner of another team and wanted to see his product get a little bit better. But those are the few really true, loyal guys. Udonis Haslem on a lesser extent to the Miami Heat anyway. LeBron and his loyalty to Cleveland, the city, not necessarily the Cavaliers. But Giannis is probably the most family-oriented guy in the NBA as of right now. He has brought all of his brothers. They're all on the team anyway. He's got everything he's ever wanted with Milwaukee. He just signed that extension. Now, I don't think that Milwaukee's ever going to entertain the option of trading for Giannis. Giannis would have to basically see his entire team basically go for naught and miss the playoffs in order for him to even consider something like this. But if you're hoping for Giannis to ever request a trade, I think you'll be holding your breath for the next 15 years till he retires. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Yeah. That trade of the first-round pick for Royce O'Neal was absolutely insane. Okay, just so you guys can understand the timeline. Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets anyway, was told directly by Kevin Durant that he wanted to be traded. Now, that announcement came around noon. The trade for Royce O'Neal happened a few hours before that, I believe. That trade, apparently there was rumors going around in private circles and media that Kevin Durant was sending out feelers that maybe he was going to be looking around for another trade. If you're the Brooklyn Nets, you just had Kyrie Irving opt into his deal, say, hey, see you in the fall. I can understand why you make the trade for Royce O'Neal. However, the first-round pick, I don't understand. Royce O'Neal is not worth the first-round pick. He's a decent three-point shooter and a great defender, has a great motor, but he's not worth a first-round pick. Sure, if you had to make the deal to get one or to get that type of a player in as a 3-and-D type of a player, okay. That makes some sort of sense, I guess. But why wouldn't you at least confirm with your star player his intentions to come in to come in and stay with your team? If you knew Kevin Durant was coming in later that afternoon to talk to the owner of the team 3 hours later, why do you make the trade? I don't understand. That trade was absolutely insane, just giving more ammunition for the Utah Jazz to rebuild on the fly. Originally, I thought maybe one or two of the stars in Utah would be gone. I knew Rudy Gobert was going to be gone because who keeps a center nowadays, especially at a $40 million price tag? Well, apparently the Minnesota Timberwolves, that's an argument for another day. But for the Brooklyn Nets trade, it doesn't make any sense. They've made a lot of great moves as far as the Utah Jazz acquiring picks, and now I don't think they're going to have to move Donovan Mitchell at all. Another move over the last 24 hours anyway, Bradley Beal did sign his extension, $251 million to stay with the Washington Wizards. That's a guy, if you're asking about who might force a trade next, he could be one of those guys. Originally, there was a trade a few days before this anyway, KCP and Ish Smith going to the Denver Nuggets anyway in exchange for Will Barton and Monte Morris. At the time, I thought Monte Morris would be a great backup point guard for them. However, it seems they signed Delon Wright to a contract worthy of being the backup point guard in Washington. So it looks like Monte Morris is going to be the starter there. If things don't work out with the way they've constructed their roster, the moves that they've made, you could fully expect to see Bradley Beal make a trade request next season, and maybe Dallas is one of those players for Bradley Beal. That was one of the first big stars that was actually rumored to go to Dallas a few years ago when Luka really burst onto the scene and was way better than everybody else thought. But somebody like that would be a star that would fit perfectly next to Luka. Great scorer, really good defender as well when he's motivated. On those losing teams with Washington, he wasn't really motivated. They played better in recent years anyway, but things still aren't good for them. They still aren't cracking the top 6 of the East. They're still going to be stuck in that perpetual play-in tournament, and that is not going to be good if you're trying to retain Bradley Beal. What assets do the Mavs have to pair Luka with another star? Cuban definitely willing to go into the luxury tax, in my opinion. Well, he's already in the luxury tax, so we already know he's willing to go there. It's just how far are you willing to go? I think the Brunson contract, limiting it to a 5-year, $106 million deal, I think is what they ended up offering him at the last request anyway. That was about 20-ish, $22, $23 million per year. That kind of a range is about the maximum I think Dallas is willing to go above the luxury tax. So kind of keep that in mind when you're penciling in who they might bring in. Just kind of fooling around with Fanspo, another trade machine site, and ESPN Trade Machine, just kind of tinkering around and seeing what they could actually do. The Mavericks have some decent contracts to trade. Now, Spencer Dinwiddie has some non-guaranteed money at the end of his deal, but his contract looks a whole lot better than it did with the Washington Wizards. He's returned some of his value. Tim Hardaway Jr. has a declining value of contract. That's a tradable contract going forward if he's healthy. If he's unhealthy and that foot just isn't healing properly, if he's unable to regain that three-point shooting, that contract or that his value goes down as well. The worst contract they have, of course, is Davis Bertans, but even that is a tradable commodity, or whether it be now or in the future, because it's a non-guaranteed salary in the final year. They also have their first-round picks in 25, 27, and 29. They, of course, can do pick swaps in between. As far as young pieces that they could trade away, they don't really have much in that way. If you're looking for young, up-and-coming talent, the only real player that you can choose from is going to be Josh Green. Not really going to excite anybody, but he's a 3-and-D wing. That's what everybody wants nowadays, so maybe it's a lottery ticket for another team. But it's really going to be about those type of contracts, maybe flipping them to a contender and getting more picks to go to towards the acquisition of a star. Kyrie Irving is a very gettable piece right now that would get them another ball handler, another star on the team. But the question is he worth that type of acquisition price? I don't know. Let us know in the comments if you think that he is worth that. I don't believe that he's worth 2 first-round picks, but maybe if you give away a big contract and a nice rotation piece for the Brooklyn Nets to be able to stay competitive, and a first, something like that might get it done for the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie does not have much trade value. Your only real competition for him is going to be a trade of Russell Westbrook and a 2027 unprotected first from the Lakers. So if you can beat that offer, you're probably going to get Kyrie Irving. I mentioned in the video, I think last night, that the best offer that the LA Lakers could make is Westbrook and that 2027 unprotected first and maybe a 29 unprotected first. No way the Lakers are throwing in both of those pieces. There was somebody who mentioned that KD could possibly be an option for the Lakers. No, that's not a realistic option. That's never going to happen. Even if Anthony Davis and every other asset that they have going the other way, that would not be enough to entice KD. But to kind of stick with the Kyrie Irving portion of it, the trade that the LA Lakers have had on the table is still the same. They can't improve it from there. Could they throw other pieces in there like a Talen Horton-Tucker? Sure, but that's not going to excite the Brooklyn Nets anyway. That's a bigger contract for his type of a player anyway, a backup shooting guard that struggled last year on a team that really needed some production out of that position. I don't see him getting that much better in his career, and so that's not really moving the needle if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan. Therefore, the trade, if you can beat that Russell Westbrook and an unprotected first in 2027, I think you're probably going to end up with Kyrie Irving. One thing that's been around the trade circles anyway the last few days, and certainly over the last year, is that the Philadelphia 76ers are looking to shed money. Tobias Harris is one of those pieces that could be moved. You ask, is Cuban likely to go after another star? He's not necessarily a star, but he's a very productive offensive player. Kind of some overlap with a Christian Wood type as far as on the offensive end of the floor, that kind of a thing. But he does create his own shot a little bit better than Christian Wood does. That contract, though, is the albatross, and that's the reason why the 76ers are trying to get rid of it. Maybe if you make a guy like Hardaway and Bertans and a couple of firsts, maybe get it back another young asset from the 76ers just to kind of even things out a little bit. Something like that could move. Any chance the Nets move off Ben Simmons in order to get another young star in return for KD? The trade that the Brooklyn Nets made to get James Harden off of their roster, to get a couple of first-round picks, Seth Curry and Ben Simmons, might go down as one of the worst decisions in trade history, aside from maybe the Minnesota Timberwolves acquiring Rudy Gobert for the unprotected picks that they did today. Because Ben Simmons has not played in a year. He cannot shoot the ball. Maybe he's been working on that, but he's shown that his love for the game isn't there. And we've seen when you have players like that, they don't necessarily work out as a star player on that team. If you're hoping for Ben Simmons to be a great defender, that kind of a thing, maybe a $10 million player, great contract. If you're giving him $30 million over a period of 4 straight years, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's poor business management. I don't understand why they were going after Ben Simmons as the piece they wanted back for him. I understand that Philadelphia was really trying to talk up his value. Oh, he can handle the ball. If he ever gets a jump shot, he's going to be a great NBA player. He can't shoot, let alone hit a jump shot, let alone hit a three-point shot. I don't understand everybody's infatuation with Ben Simmons. Let me know in the comment section if you think for some reason Ben Simmons is the next great thing, but I have yet to see any reason that he is. He's probably one of the best, if not the best defender in the league right now, but he hasn't played in a year. He's gotten probably a little bit slower because he hasn't been on the court, so other players are going to have a step on him, at least coming out of next season anyway. One of the other best players as far as defensively is Aaron Gordon, but he's been on the floor. He's been there, able to play. Rudy Gobert, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, has been on the floor, able to play. Draymond Green, on the floor, able to play. And I don't see the comparison between Draymond and Ben Simmons. Draymond at least can shoot a little bit. He just chooses to pass more and be a facilitator a whole lot more. Ben Simmons tries to replicate that, but you still need to be able to shoot the ball every now and again. We saw when the Boston Celtics had their title run back in the late 2000s anyway, 2007, 2010, in that range, KG, Paul George, or excuse me, Paul Pierce anyway, that group. Rajon Rondo did not have a jump shot back then, but he still found a way to be effective on the offensive end of the floor. Ben Simmons still has not found a way to be effective on the offensive end of the floor other than just strictly driving to the basket. Rajon Rondo built up a mid-range game. He still struggled from three, but wasn't unwilling to shoot the shot if he was left open. Ben Simmons is absolutely terrified to shoot that kind of a shot, and so I don't understand why they acquired Ben Simmons. But if you're trying to look at him to acquire more pieces, more assets in the future, he has negative trade value, in my opinion. He had negative trade value at the time when the James Harden trade went down. So I don't understand why people are so infatuated with Ben Simmons. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he could be a great player coming out of being out for a year and the mental health issues that he struggled through the entire time. But I don't see it. I just don't understand why everybody's still infatuated with Ben Simmons. All right. Kind of want to check on a couple of things. Suns did sign Damian Lee, 1-year deal. Looks like it's minimum salary. One of the few moves the Suns have made is it seems that they've put everything on hold for a Kevin Durant trade. There's only a few teams out there that can really make a Kevin Durant type of trade. The two preferred destinations are, of course, the most interesting. Miami Heat have a lot of young players and pieces that could go the other way. But in order for that to happen, they'd have to have picks included as well, and they don't have the picks that, say, a team like the other one involved in the sweepstakes, the Phoenix Suns. Now, the Phoenix Suns only have a couple of really good pieces that they can trade. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and a sign and trade of DeAndre Ayton would make sense as well. They also have their picks. That's why everybody thinks that the Phoenix Suns would be one of the best teams for a KD type of trade to happen. But there's a couple other teams that would be of interest out there. The Dallas Mavericks, of course, have a lot of tradable assets, picks as well. Maybe not necessarily as good at assets as, say, the Phoenix Suns or the Miami Heat, but they have something the Miami Heat don't. And so we'll see what ends up happening there. A lot of teams that are rebuilding right now are looking to kind of find their footing in the NBA as far as competitive teams anyway. Teams like the Sacramento Kings are pushing all their chips forward, but they keep trading away picks, so they don't really have the assets to do something like that. That would make a lot of sense for them as far as the type of player they need. They just need to go a little bit lesser than that. So maybe a player like a John Collins, if you're a Kings fan, would be a lot more feasible, but I've heard them being mentioned as well. At the outset of the trade request, the Brooklyn Nets send out a feeler with NBA reporters that they wanted to get a player like Bam Adebayo back or a Devin Booker back. With Bam just signing his extension, he's not eligible to be traded. KD basically sent out a feeler as well that he doesn't want Kyle Lowry to be traded. He wants to be a part of that core. So that takes another trade chip off of the table for the Miami Heat. If you're a Phoenix Suns fan, the Nets wanted Devin Booker. With him signing that max extension, that's not going to happen. But they really need to capitalize on the Chris Paul window. We saw Chris Paul wear down in the playoffs, and if you constantly attack him, he is going to be a weak point on that team. So cashing in their chips now and trying to get that title right now before Chris Paul loses all ability to function on the court makes some sense. Plus, having a core of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant makes a lot of sense going forward as well, even with an aging Kevin Durant. Lakers interested in Duncan Robinson. Seems like Miami should be trying to sell him off the payroll since he's not in the rotation. He's only not in the rotation when his shot isn't falling. As a three-point shooter in the NBA, if your shot's not falling, you're not going to be playing. So we saw in the playoffs anyway, some games he was held out by Spoelstra, some games he was in there, and they just saw essentially through practice, if his shot was falling that night, he was probably going to get more minutes. If during shoot around or during practice the shot wasn't falling, he was probably going to ride the bench a little bit more. Lakers, the only piece that you could really trade is going to be Taylor Horton-Tucker, going back the other way for Duncan Robinson. Maybe that 2027 first-round pick unprotected makes sense. The only reason I could see that happening is if Miami's trying to acquire picks to go to Brooklyn to get a Kevin Durant. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you watching. But we do try to put out quite a bit of content every day. There's literally, I have 30 videos. I'm not kidding. 30 of them that I could make right now based off of what happened today. That's why I try to do these live streams, just to kind of hit everything, just in case there's even more news and I can't get to every single one of these done. But other moves that we've seen made over the last day or so, Lou Dort, one of the best defensive players in the NBA for the Oklahoma City Thunder, signed a 5-year, $87.5 million contract. He was a very nice piece for the Oklahoma City Thunder. A number of teams were interested in him at the trade deadline, but with the young pieces coming up for the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're finally investing in their talent and not just acquiring big contracts and future picks. They're finally investing in the team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander signed that max contract last offseason. Now they signed Lou Dort. Josh Giddey panned out as the first-round pick last year, the number 6 overall pick last year. They did just draft Chet Holmgren at the number 2 spot, along with 3 other high draft picks as well. Their team is going to be very good in a couple of years, maybe even sooner than that, depending on how these picks work out. But let's see. There was another rumor today of another team interested in Kevin Durant on the periphery of playoff contention anyway, the Toronto Raptors. That's a very interesting trade partner for the Brooklyn Nets, mainly because it's still in the East. The pieces that you could see going back the other way, you'd imagine it'd have to be Scotty Barnes, it'd have to be OG Anunoby, it'd have to be first-round picks, and then you're going to have a team of Siakam, Durant, maybe Gary Trent Jr. if they're able to hold on to him and not have to put him in the trade. Fred VanVleet, they just signed Chris Boucher to be their center for 3 years, $35.5 million, I believe, was the contract that he just signed with Toronto. But that would be a very interesting team. They'd have a great starting 5. However, they would have no bench. There would be nothing there, which is what we just saw with the Brooklyn Nets, and that'd be a worse version of what they just had with Brooklyn. Maybe they have stronger leadership, sure, and that seems to be one of the gripes that Kevin Durant has about the direction of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, KD is a part of that leadership group, so as many times as he says he has gripes about that and he doesn't agree with how things were handled and he thought it wasn't professional and all those kinds of things, that still falls on Kevin Durant to some degree. So kind of keep that in mind when you're throwing stones at a glass house. Yours is also, glass. But the Duncan Robinson comment, he's probably the most likely to be moved, possibly a Tyler Hero if they're going to go after another star, if you're a Miami trade. Another move that we saw yesterday anyway, Malik Monk left the Los Angeles Lakers, signed a 2-year, $19 million deal to go to the Sacramento Kings. That was a good move for them, as well as the addition of Kevin Huerter that rebuilds their guard rotation after losing a lot of that depth to the Indiana Pacers. They should be a playoff team next year, so it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening there. One other team that was mentioned in the KD sweepstakes is the New Orleans Pelicans. We just saw Zion sign that $231 million contract extension, despite only playing in 85 games so far. Did I mention that correctly? 85 games. The NBA season is 82 games long. He's been in the league for 3 years. That means he's missed almost 2 full NBA seasons. Last year, he did not play a single game, yet he was seen multiple times before games doing dunk contests and that kind of a thing. Now, whether that was with the team's approval or just on his own volition, it seems like the team was holding him back. And even in a playoff run or drive to the playoffs, they were not allowing him to suit up with the team. He stepped away from the team for an extended period of time, so there wasn't necessarily great chemistry built up with the team. But I don't understand the thinking for the New Orleans Pelicans other than just strictly holding on to the talent, holding on to him as a trade asset. And for Zion, for playing 85 games, he's made a lot of money. He's box office when he's there. He's box office when he's healthy. He's a great NBA player, but he can't maintain his weight. He struggles with conditioning, and he's not able to play in the NBA. Now, once he gets those things under control, maybe he's able to be a little bit more consistent, but we haven't seen him be able to do so for an extended period of time. The most games he's been able to play in a single year is, I believe, 61 or 66 games. He still hasn't played a full NBA season in any of the 3 years. What's next for Miles Bridges? Well, he finished second in the Defensive Player of the Year voting. Before he signed that contract extension, I was really hoping, as a Maverick fan anyway, that he would be one of the top free agent targets for the Dallas Mavericks. When he signed that contract extension, I was hoping maybe we could get him in some type of a sign-and-trade scenario or some type of a trade as part of a 3-team deal, allowing Phoenix to get a bigger star. However, it seems like that bigger star now is going to be Kevin Durant if they're able to make that type of a move. And I don't think Brooklyn is going to be willing to move on from a guy like Mikal Bridges. Sorry, Mikal Bridges is the one I'm talking about, not Miles. But Mikal Bridges would be the guy that I would want from the Phoenix Suns. As for Miles Bridges, I think everything just stops. Literally just stopped the second he was arrested for felony domestic violence charges. He's going to probably have the qualifying offer rescinded from the Charlotte Hornets if they're able to rescind that contract offer. He's going to have a lot of legal issues going forward. The woman involved in the altercation required medical attention. It's unclear how much medical attention. The LAPD, 2 days after it was reported that he was arrested and released on a $130,000 bond, said that yes, indeed, he was arrested for felony domestic violence. This tells you that LAPD is not just going to sweep these charges under the rug. The NBA and NBA teams don't take domestic violence charges lightly anymore. They take them a lot more seriously than they ever have before. That is one of the foremost things from all the players, both on the union side and then also from the league, just wanting to see things handled a lot more professionally and a lot better off the court when it comes to these situations. Miles Bridges is going to be one of the trial cases to see how this is handled, but I don't expect him to be suiting up for the Charlotte Hornets next year, at least until after Christmas. If his legal situation is able to be resolved by Christmas, maybe he works his way back into some type of rotation for the Charlotte Hornets, but I don't think another team's going to be able to sign him either just because of all the legal questions. If I'm Miles Bridges, I look at that qualifying offer right now, I sign it, and I say, thank you. I'll play for you one more season at $14.9 million, I think was the qualifying offer, or $14 million anyway, somewhere in that 14 range. But I take that money and I hopefully rebuild my value, rebuild my trust within the organization. And maybe Charlotte says, just like before this altercation happened, that they were going to put all their chips forward and try to keep him, and that other teams, even though they were going to make max offers, they were going to try to retain Miles Bridges. That was where Miles Bridges was 3 days ago before the altercation happened, and now this is where we stand. Miles Bridges is in a heap of trouble, and it may not even be taken care of by Christmas. This may take an entire year. He may end up serving prison time for this. We'll have to see what ends up happening. But domestic violence is not something to joke about. It's not something anybody takes lightly anymore. It has not been handled in the entire history of humanity very well in the past. And now that we're finally more aware of the consequences and the effects it has, the NBA is at the forefront of that thought process anyway, as far as taking these things more seriously. So Miles Bridges is going to have a world of hurt around him for an extended period of time. But getting back to the other news and notes of the day anyway, let's see. The Thunder signed all of their draft picks now. Chet Holmgren is now under contract. No surprise there, obviously. I mentioned the Bryn Forbes contract with the Timberwolves after trading away a couple of their backup point and two guards anyway. Getting a good wing who can shoot the three. It was needed for them. Bryn Forbes signed a minimum salary contract. It's just a one-year deal. A little bit surprising. Bryn Forbes I've never thought was a fantastic player, but he does provide some three-point shooting. It looks like he shot 41% last year, playing for two different teams. So we'll have to see what ends up happening there. The move that the Wolves made for Rudy Gobert left them a little bit devoid of skill players to back up that point and shooting guard position. Looks like they signed Anthony Gill as well to a 2-year deal. Some more depth for the Wolves after the trade for Gobert. Let's see. The Lakers signed 3 today. Toscano Anderson's the one I haven't mentioned before. He came over from the Golden State Warriors anyway. All of these contracts were minimum salary contracts that they just signed. Damian Jones, Troy Brown as well. Troy Brown Jr., I believe, was the player that they signed. Troy Brown is a very athletic, rangy wing. You'll notice that the players that they're signing this year, at least the Lakers are, is younger, talented players. They're not signing guys like Avery Bradley Jr. to take up rotation minutes. They're not going after guys like Wayne Ellington. Those are pieces that, as we got further into the season, looked like they were wearing down. They didn't really have any youth to supplant them. One piece that they have on their roster I expect good things from is Kendrick Nunn. He's on a $5.5 million deal, but he missed the entire season last year. We'll see if he can regain the form that he had in Miami the year before. Yeah. Thanks, Jake. Have a nice night. But it tuned here to the upside. We'll put out a whole bunch more videos on all the different things that have happened. One other thing that I forgot to mention today, anyway, Mo Bamba, one of the top free agent centers out there on the market besides JaVale McGee, DeAndre Ayton, that type of player. 2 years, $21 million. Hold on just a second. Sorry, I just had somebody come into our chat here. I want to get rid of them before they get us in trouble here. Can't have that here at the upside. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. All right, but just kind of going over the other moves of the day. One other move that I haven't mentioned is the Gary Payton, the second signing. He signed a 3-year deal, I believe, with the Portland Trailblazers. Yet another questionable contract for the Trailblazers. The money is the reason why it's a questionable deal. I believe it was I want to say it was a 3-year, $28 million contract is what I saw. That's a lot of money for a guy who played backup minutes. Sure, he's a good defender, and he'd be a nice mix with Anthony Simons, who's a strictly offensive piece, as well as Damian Lillard. So a good defender in the backcourt for them. But the price is what I have an issue with. Another big contract-ish anyway for his type of a player. That could have gone to another star type of a player for the Portland Trailblazers. If you're a Portland Trailblazers fan, you got Jeremy Grant in a trade with the Detroit Pistons, and that's your big acquisition. Anthony Simons signing the 4-year, $100 million deal is your other big acquisition this offseason. Those aren't moving the needle for me. I was expecting more from them. I was expecting them to try to really convince Damian Lillard to stick around after trading away some of his close friends on the team. Now, sure, it's not all about friendship and that kind of a thing, but it matters when you're not winning championships. And the Trailblazers with this roster are not going to win a championship anytime soon. The Indiana Pacers did make a move today. They signed Jalen Smith to a 2-year, $2.6 million deal. That was the maximum that they could offer. You'll remember he came over from the Phoenix Suns anyway in that trade a couple years ago. One player that's still on the market as well from the Phoenix Suns that was traded to the Indiana Pacers is TJ Warren. He missed a lot of time with injury this year. I saw how well he performed. We all saw how well he performed in the bubble. He had that 50-point game in the bubble, really kind of burst out of his shell. More of an offensive threat. And he's always been a good offensive player, but he really stepped it up to the next level. He could be one of the surprising pieces for a team to acquire, maybe a sign-and-trade type of a deal. Could be in the works for him to go to a contender without cap space. That way they could get a little bit better at that 3 position. Wings are always in demand, whether or not you can play defense or if you can shoot. If you can do one of the two, we just saw Royce O'Neal get traded for a first-round pick from the Brooklyn Nets anyway. So wings are always in demand. When in doubt in the draft a wing. It's no longer a big or a center game, that kind of thing. It's all about the wings. Guard play is nice, but wings are what win. Looks like the Lakers are interested in center Thomas Bryant. He was an unrestricted free agent. The only thing that the Lakers can offer, though, is a minimum deal. Thomas Bryant played for the Washington Wizards the last couple of years. He's definitely improved as well. The Raptors are also interested in a player like Thomas Bryant. He's one of the best centers left on the free agent market right now, so I expect him to go quickly. Just kind of going through all the other headlines today. There's a whole bunch of them, you guys. If you guys are following free agents, the NBA free agency, this is pretty much how it's going to be at least for the next few days. Hockey free agency starts, I believe, on July 13th. The one thing I like about that is it's almost all on one day. So you get a few days of, I'll make a few days worth of content out of that, trying to go over all the different things that have happened. Danilo Gallinari. I forgot to mention him. The DeJounte Murray trade that happened with the San Antonio Spurs and the Atlanta Hawks a few days ago. That trade sent Danilo Gallinari, who's on a 1-year, $21 million expiring contract. I thought at the time that the San Antonio Spurs were going to move that contract and acquire more assets, and then he was going to end up being bought out by the next team. It seems like the Spurs are going to do right by Gallinari and allow him to just go ahead and be bought out. He wants to move on to the Boston Celtics. They have some room, some minutes available in their front court after trading away Daniel Tice. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But he is getting older. The shot isn't falling as much. His feet are a little bit slower. So he's not going to be a defensive type of player at all. And he's never really has been, but he's very much a liability nowadays. So we'll see what kind of minutes he does get if he ends up signing with the Boston Celtics. Rockets signed all of their picks. Celtics decided to bring back Luke Cornett after trading away again Daniel Tice. Refills that front court for them at least. He's not going to be one of the most important players for them, but he does give them some depth at least. Magic signed the top overall pick, Paolo Banchero. He's going to be one of the best players in the NBA probably in the next few years. I don't expect him to start off gangbusters. We saw how hard it is for good, high-quality talent to come into the league in Orlando. Jalen Suggs last year shot like 25% from 3, 36% from 2. He was a great college player, high pedigree, that kind of thing. It just didn't work out. We've seen a number of top picks go there and just struggle. So I expect Paolo Banchero to have his struggles there. Maybe a year or 2 or 3 down the line, we could have something as kind of like a Jonathan Isaac, but a better offensive player than a Jonathan Isaac. Bielitsa, who just won the title with the Warriors this season, has decided to go back to Europe. Looks like he's going to Turkey. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I haven't made a video on this. I was literally just running out the door for work, and I didn't have time to make a video on Ricky Rubio signing a 3-year, $18.4 million contract to stay with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Before his injury, in 36 games before his injury, he had turned that team around, and he definitely got that engine going in the right direction. Of course, some of that is due to Darius Garland taking that next step as a player. Colin Sexton also missed time and allowed Darius Garland to take over more of that offense. But Ricky Rubio was very inspirational for that team, really gave them some leadership. They ended up missing his leadership so much so that they had to go out and get another point guard very much like him as far as leadership is concerned, ability to distribute the ball whenever Garland needed to take a seat on the bench and rest for a few minutes, and they brought in Rajon Rondo. But the acquisition of Rubio certainly will help them out. They added Raul Nieto anyway on a 1-year deal as well, minimum salary deal. This is going to be another backup point guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers. More of a three-point shooter than a ball handler, distributor type of a player. So he should give them somebody who can play off the ball next to Darius Garland. He is very small, so you would have to worry about the small backcourt. They always have played with a big front court, though, with Markkanen, Mosley, and Jarrett Allen on the floor at the same time in Cleveland last year. That's 6'10" and above guys for all three, 2 of which are really good defenders, able to move their feet. Markkanen, not so much, but you have that luxury when you have a guy like Jarrett Allen to erase shots down low. Jarrett Allen, of course, signed a 4-year, $20 million extension, or I think it was 4 years, $20 million per year extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers last year. That contract looks like a bargain right now when you look at what Rudy Gobert, anyway, was just traded for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Just to kind of recap the news of the day, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert was traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves for 4 first-round picks and a pick swap, in addition to Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, Jarrett Vanderbilt, Leandro Balmaro, and a first-round pick from this year. So in total, Leandro Balmaro was a first-round pick last year. Kessler was a pick this year, plus the 4 picks that you're getting guaranteed, and the pick swap. You could get, looks like, almost 7 first-round value back from for Rudy Gobert. That's absolutely insane. Looking at what everybody, and I mean everybody, fans, outside reporters, league executives, that kind of thing, everybody went off on the package that Rudy Gobert got, or that the Utah Jazz got back in return for Rudy Gobert. That's absolutely insane. Rudy Gobert is a great center right now. He was able to move his feet and stay in front of Luka Doncic at times during the postseason. He is still a center. Centers have difficulty moving their feet. He's shown friction with teammates in the past. He's on a $40 million max salary for the next 4 years. And you just signed Karl Anthony Towns minutes before this trade began, or went down anyway, to a contract extension, 4 years, $214 million. That's absolutely insane amount of money that you have at your center and power forward position, both of which are going to have struggles moving their feet in years 2 and 3 of their current deals. Players that they still have on their roster, of course, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels. They didn't have to give up any of those pieces. One player that they did add that I haven't made a video on yet is going to help with veteran leadership and provide them with some skill at that 3 position, a good defender, ability to pass the ball, facilitate type of thing. Think of Joe Ingles back in his heyday with the Utah Jazz. That's basically who Kyle Anderson is. We saw how effective he was a year ago with the Memphis Grizzlies, and until he was injured this year was looking like more of the same. He signed a 2-year, $18 million deal to go to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves also retained Taurean Prince, 2 years, $16 million. But it's a hefty contract for Rudy Gobert. That's my biggest problem with it, so we'll see what ends up happening there. Pardon me. There we go. Sorry about that. Got somebody in our comment section trying to advertise things that should not be advertised on here. Anyway, but thank you guys for joining our live stream. We really do appreciate it. Going to try to do one of these live streams over the next couple of days as more of these moves are happening. Just to kind of recap again, Rudy Gobert goes to the Timberwolves for basically 5 first-round picks and some guards as well. Zach LaVine, 5 years, $215 million to the Chicago Bulls. Bradley Beal, $251 million to stay with the Washington Wizards. Malcolm Brogdon traded to the Boston Celtics for a 2023 first-round pick. I didn't mention this, but it's a great trade by the Boston Celtics to have that pick go instead of one of their future picks down the line. I'm sure the Indiana Pacers would love a more valuable pick, say in 2027 or 2028 or 2029, because we just saw the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. Even if they make it back to the postseason and say they get out in, say, the second round of the playoffs, that's still going to be not a lottery pick. And so after all this, all the acquisitions that they've made, they're going to be a very good team next year, especially with having Malcolm Brogdon on the team. They figure to be a little bit more effective on offense, a little bit more efficient as well. And so they're not going to have the same issues that they did before. But those are kind of your headlines of the day. Kevin Huerter, of course, goes to the Sacramento Kings. The Bulls signed Andre Drummond. Lonnie Walker is going to the Lakers. Tyus Jones, I mentioned it in the live last night anyway, 2 years, $30 million to stay with Memphis. Great contract for him. When he was in the starting lineup when John Morant was out, the team actually played a little bit better and won at a higher clip. Now, John Morant is a lot better player, don't get me wrong. Tyus Jones is not John Morant, but that's kind of that's where the Memphis Grizzlies value him at. P.J. Tucker agreed to a 3-year, $33 million deal to go to the 76ers. Harden is working on a contract with the 76ers as well after opting out of his player option. Joe Ingles signed a contract with the Milwaukee Bucks. Nurkic signed a 4-year, $70 million deal to go to the Portland Trail Blazers. Gary Payton II signed a 3-year, $28 million deal to go to the Blazers. And Anthony Simons last night signed a 4-year, $100 million to stay with the Portland Trail Blazers. Let us know in the comment section what you think of all these moves. And just seeing another one right now, the Raptors signed Otto Porter Jr. I don't see what the contract terms there are, but I don't expect it to be too prohibitive. He just won a title with the Golden State Warriors. He's been sought after for a number of years as kind of a wing scorer, if you will, and he definitely performed exemplary in the postseason. He actually showed some defensive abilities in the postseason as well until he was injured, of course. But Kyrie Irving is also very likely to be traded. The Lakers and the Mavericks are the most likely, and Kevin Durant is still on the open market. Thank you guys again for joining us here at the Upside, and we'll see you hopefully in all of our videos that we're going to be putting out over the next 24 hours and at tomorrow night's live as well. Thank you again, and remember, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. We really appreciate it, and thanks for joining the community. See you next time.